two of Firewire's best grovelers you see on the nice clickbaity thumbnail. Let's get a straight shot before we begin. Which one are you going with? Are you going with the lovely Mashup, made to mash whatever you can throw at it? Or are you going to go the ultimate chunky boy? Oh yeah, it's chunky. This thing can ride dribble. If you went out on the Great Lakes, you could ride the sweet potato. So let's talk about it. Both of these boards are extremely fun. There is no doubt about that. Both boards are different enough, I think. As you can see right away with the noses, the sweet potato's nose is a lot like the Machado Cotto's nose. It is wide. It is extremely, extremely wide, and it keeps its width all the way up until the very top, which is pretty crazy. The Mashup, on the other hand, does actually, and I'll really show you here, it gets pretty narrow as it gets to the nose. Now, I'm saying pretty narrow in the groveling way. It's still definitely, a fishy groveling board, but when you're out paddling around on the Mashup and just you stand up and you start riding, it doesn't feel like you're on a board like the sweet potato. When you're paddling on the sweet potato and then you stand up, it feels like you're on like an egg, like a biscuit, like a bonzer, like a mini longboard. Right away when you stand up, you feel the platform, which kind of extends pretty much from like almost halfway down the board all the way down, does this platform thing. The Mashup only does that platform thing on the very end, right by the tail, is where it does that indention. That indention right there, and by the way, track pads are so 1990s. This indention right here, that is kind of like on the whole sweet potato deck. And what that does is it turns the sweet potato into basically the Titanic. You are paddling around on the Titanic before you hit the iceberg, and life's great. The band's playing, everyone's happy. The Mashup, when you're paddling around, you definitely feel you're like you're on a high performance shortboard. It is a lot more rocky. When you duck dive, it's a lot thinner by the nose, so it's easier to grab the nose, duck dive under. It's going to feel like you're riding a shortboard. If you want the ultimate longboard replacer, even though I kind of claim that in my Machado Cotto review, the ultimate longboard replacer really is the sweet potato. Now, mid-lengths obviously are going to be a similar replacer, but the mid-length actually might even surf a little more high performance than the sweet potato, especially with the fins. What I'm learning with the sweet potato is you really got to dial in the fins. If you want to surf it like you're going to surf the Mashup or even close to, I would highly recommend these fins. The Endorphin 2+1. This is the magical fin setup because this is the 510 sweet potato, and let me tell you, this thing is like the boatiest of all boats. But with this fin setup, it loosens it up heaps, and it turns it into like basically a giant boat that you can pivot around really easily. So you can ride like the smallest little dribble, but because you have these pretty large side twin fins and a not super small, but small enough back Endorphin trailer, it like creates this awesome 2+1 feeling, but it's not like a 2+1 like when you ride the Mashup 2+1. It's kind of like when you're riding a longboard. It's a little bit more drawn out, but you can definitely throw it a little bit, but it just keeps so much thickness all through here. I mean, the board is, yeah, the board's pretty much 3 inches thick. The 510 is 510, 22 and a half, 2 and 13/16. So it's a beast. So what a lot of people do, I think, is they put in, and I was talking to someone, shout out my buddy who just got the 510, and he was trying like a quad setup. And I think in the end, the sweet potato, the quad setup is nice because you're gonna like plow through nothing and catch nothing. But then when you try to start turning it, it's just so much fin in an already oversized board. So if you get the sweet potato, kind of how you maybe shouldn't get it like a really small 5.2, it could do a little better because then it actually needs more hold back here. And I do have a review coming out of the sweet potato, and I'm pretty stoked on it. I got like a bunch of good sessions, and it's funny because I actually got a lot of good waves on this thing and one super duper crappy session. So luckily, I did get to try it in the crappiest of crap. But the sweet potato actually performs pretty well up to chest high. If you know how to surf it, it can surf head high waves. It just can't be the most top to bottom, and it really excels with this fin setup with those kind of waves because it can still throw it enough where it's not going to completely just dig rail. And you also don't dig rail because I was saying the platform where it kind of, it's hard to show on the camera, but you can kind of see it here actually. So if you look at it straight, see that's the rail right there. It's starting here and then it's coming all the way down there. Whereas I'll show you on the mashup, see if that's going to stay or it's going to be that's going to be a catastrophe. The mashup's rail is a lot more precise and actually not as platformy. You can see that rail is pretty much where the rail should be. It starts here and it just kind of folds over there. It's not coming up gradually and then platforming. Only on the tail it does that. But I think that these two boards in the end are the best two to both have with the least amount of overlap. I was thinking the other day, it's pretty cool how Firewire, well, not good for your wallet, but all the boards in this Firewire line with the Helium and kind of like they're made for smaller waves. The overlap is so, the Venn diagram is like so multiplied that you could have like 5 of these boards and they actually would ride pretty differently in each of the waves. So I think that's pretty cool. The fins I have in the mashup are a set of Tri-NBS comp fins. And I really like these. They are stiff AF with 2 Fs. And these are the medium size. I kind of like the medium size because they're already so stiff. And the mashup, like the tail is, you're able to throw it around so much that this feels like almost kind of like a 2+1 setup. And it kind of is because this back fin is a little smaller than the 2 side fins. I have ridden this as a 2+1. I haven't used the exact endorphins in this, but I've pretty much ridden the 2 NBS album twin fins with the NBS stabilizer. And then I have like this one company, DeFlow twin fins NBS stabilizer. I use the NBS stabilizer in the sweet potato. And long story short, you'd be surprised how much of a difference the size of the back fin makes. Even a minuscule change in uprightness and rake in square footage. Someone's texting me while I'm working. Never text me while I'm working. Don't ever do that. Instagram service 242 is obviously scamming me. But see, now it's also a train of thought because you bother me while I'm working. It's unbelievable. But you don't want to like rely so much on, if a board's not working, that the fins are like not changing the fins isn't going to change the board completely. fins are going to change the board more than you would ever know. So both of these do come in the 5-fin setup. Both I see online are kind of supposed to be ridden more so as a quad. I think some of Dan Manshape's he prefers as a quad, even though in a recent interview he was kind of saying that he likes riding the new FRK or the Kelly board Swallow as a tri-fin more than a quad. So again, these 5-fin setups are kind of made just so all surfers are pleased, and you're not gonna like, get rid of a surfer just because that board doesn't have the correct fins that you want in the board. But yeah, let me guys know in the comments like which one of the boards do you prefer. I've been kind of cycling through a bunch of these verses of board versus board, and I thought this one was interesting because again, it's unless you're gonna go like the Dominator versus the Sweet Potato, these are the two most obvious different boards, and you can really just see by the noses. Like the Sweet Potato gets so freaking wide up there. The Mashup actually gets pretty refined at the nose. And then at the tail, it's the same thing. Where they both do get thin, but the Mashup's tail is like the thinnest, most craziest thing ever. I mean, even today I rode this board, and this is the 5.9 Mashup. That's the 5.10 Sweet Potato. And it gets so thin right here that it's just like pretty unbelievable. The Sweet Potato, it gets thin enough for being like the chunkiest of the chunk, but this gets so thin right there, and this little, you can see here, this little indention runs from here all the way to here. So this back right above the fins ends up being like kind of like a skateboard deck, and your foot is right on top of that back convexed up part, and you're almost just tic-tacking. There's a few sections today where I was going. Is this gonna say? That might say, that might not say. We'll say. I was going, and it was like the line was pretty far down the line. I was like, all right, I got to beat this section, and instead of like doing a pump or even like trying to like just hold the line and go, the Mashup, you just kind of like do a tic-tac skateboard move, and it's not really pumping. It's kind of like these little micro pumps, and it's super interesting because while you're doing it, it doesn't feel like you're on any other surfboard. Like the Sweet Potato doesn't really do that. Any other all the boards, the Machado Cotto doesn't really do that. Those are just gonna pump kind of normal, but the Mashup, just because it has this indentation, and it runs way up here, and then it gets so thin that right here is just like 2 points, and then just you bounce around. So it can be a little kind of skatey and out of control, but once you kind of realize like after that point that you go into the bottom turn, it is like magic because you just go so fast, and you're like, holy crap, I can't believe how fast I was going. There was a few times where I was going and there'd be someone down the line, and I could tell that they didn't think I was going to make it to the section, so they kind of wouldn't paddle fast to get out of the way. So I'd have to like race to them, and then pretty much, be out where they're at, and miss my maneuver because they didn't get out of the way. But it's interesting how both of us in real time when I'm riding on the wave, we're like, you're not going to make this section. But the Mashup, you just pitter patter. Oh, there we go. You pitter patter. I think that also because of the NVS fins, and they're like just so stiff with so much hold, that they do a great job. And because they're a little smaller, they don't feel like you're just like stuck. So as long as there's a little wave, the Mashup, you can really pitter patter, tic tac, and have some like kind of stiffer, like faster fins, and you're gonna beat lots of sections and go very fast, very fast. The Sweet Potato. Oh boy! Wow. Let me pick that up, maybe. Oh, it's a catastrophe. A live stream catastrophe. We survived. The sweet potato, you're not tic-tacking like on a skateboard. With the 2+1 endorphins, you're mimicking the mashup tic-tac, but it's definitely a little more slow going. But because it's so much volume anyway, you're not really having to like beat the section because you already paddled into the wave, stood up, and you're already riding down the wave. So you're like further out in front of the wave than you'd be on the mashup already. That's what I really like about the sweet potato is you like paddle into the wave and you can just tell that it's so floaty and there's so much float right here. And it's a lot more like the Machado Cotto than the mashup with the overall shape. It's kind of like a Machado Cotto XL. But it's even more gargantuan. It's even more like Mondo Burger. And it's just so great because you can put so much pressure on your chest. And you know, sometimes when it's like a small wave and you got to like move up a little bit and then put more pressure and you kind of like dip into the wave. This does this really good. And then when you stand up, because it's the Helium, you kind of have that get up and go. And you don't need to like do the mashup tic tac. You just get up and you're already like planing like a longboard. So that part's really awesome. Like I love the entry into the wave on the sweet potato. It really reminds me of kind of the Machado Cotto entry, where the Machado Cotto, Machado Cotto is essentially like taking these two boards and mashing them together and like the mash. It's a mash or something, but that board is it's not as uber grabby as the sweet potato. Like the sweet potato, once you ride it a few times, at first you're like, it's for me. It actually like right away clicked, just because I got lucky with the fin setup. Which shout out Firewire, they did recommend that fin setup to me because they knew I kind of wanted the more of a 2+1 twin fin feel. But I think most people, when they get the sweet potato, they're gonna put a quad in it. Back in the day, the baked potato, I think it might have only been quad. Let's see. Like I remember the baked potato, and they're not telling me the baked potato. When you look at it, like back in the day, and the baked potato did have the same platform deck where it had like a crazy oversized platform deck, but the tail on the old sweet potato, I don't think was any bueno. It was like it was kind of like the Machado Cotto tail, but really thick. So kind of like the first dumpster diver tail, but thicker. So the board isn't necessarily trying to ride super in the pocket or top to bottom or throwing the tail out. The board on the original baked potato was more so standing up, kind of like a seaside, but even on steroids, less maneuvery than the seaside. So I definitely would love to have the sweet potato in the Quiver permanently at some point. The Machado Cotto as well. I feel like again it's hilarious because they're all so freaking similar. Even these two boards behind me look not that dissimilar, except the sweet potato is like the widest board ever. When you look at the sweet potato in person, it's almost unbelievable. You don't think it's gonna ride that good because it's kind of like a freak of nature. You can even tell, but it's just so wide. It is just the widest thing you could ever imagine. But what's really interesting too, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but the bottom of the sweet potato, it's actually pretty it's kind of a lot going on here. It's pretty flat from like the middle to the top, and then it's like the belly gets into the V, and then when it comes back, the belly kind of ends a little bit, so it can kind of shoot out between each side, and that's why I think actually this fin setup is the bomb because YouTube don't cancel me for saying that word is great because water can just shoot out each of these areas. If there's a quad in here, it's almost like then it's a lot of fin mixed with a lot of board. I'm also looking at the tail a little harder now, and it does actually get pretty thin here. It's deceiving, but it's more to refine than you would think a board like this is. It doesn't stay as thin once you get past, here, but really from here, this little area right here is very thin. It does get thicker towards the middle right here, and that's because I think it kind of wants a little bit of a hip right here, so it catches more water and it's a little more stable. The mashup is just like super flat, this whole thing, and then it stays really thin as you come up the board. So that's why the mashup feels a little skatier. Feels a lot skatier. Where the sweet potato ends up being like a little more chill. Like the sweet potato really excels in just like, if you just want to, like, a lot of times on the sweet potato, I would ride straight. Like, so I would ride the board like I'm skiing, and it'd be just white water, and it was just like, you just ride the board and just like, and it's like pretty cool because you're not used to being able to ride like a shortboard that can kind of mimic the longboard, which is nice. So guys, if you enjoy the video, please smash like, hit subscribe. I saw I had 3 likes, and then I got someone disliked it or someone unliked it. So I don't know what I said. I apologize if I offended you. Maybe it was the BOMB comment or something, but please, it helps to watch the whole video. It helps to like, comment. Much appreciated to all, because this takes a lot of work, struggle. It's hard to be a YouTube surfer, doing my best, but I appreciate all you guys. Thank you so much for your continued support. Both of these boards are really awesome, and I'm going to just talk a little bit to just what I like about this kind of template Firewire does with the white helium, the black rails, and the stringer, which runs around the board, and it's that thing right there. It's the balsamic wood or something. Balsamic, some kind of wood, polonian wood or something, that is right here, but they paint it or something from here around. People complain that it's not totally black, the rails, but I actually like that because it doesn't get as hot. The wax doesn't get as melty on the rail, which is awesome, because the worst thing is when, that's why I'm still scared of black boards, because it gets so melty. But even just being kind of more blue keeps it like a little less hot when the weather is like really getting up there. I'm just gonna check my audio really quick. Oh, there we go, perfect. But so I kind of like how it's almost like a navy blue. You can't tell like looking at it, just like, oh, it's black, but then in the sun it's like, oh, it's kind of purpley navy bluish. But again, it gets a little less hot than just straight black, and I think it's kind of cool. And I also like the no stringer. I'm actually really becoming a fan of, because what happens on a stringer board, I would grab that, but that's dangerous, is after a while, it happens to everyone on a stringer board, right in the middle, it gets the stringer comes out more, and each side gets indented more. So you end up having like a big convex point down the middle coming up. And after the board gets older and older, it just gets bigger and bigger. So you end up having like a big line in the board going down your body like that, like a little stick out of the board. It's never fun. Well, with these boards, because the stringer is, on the rail essentially, you don't get any of that like straight up wood line coming that's sticking in your body. So I actually really like that, because it happens a lot on my boards. Because if you're a stomper, which I am, if you're stomping, putting lots of pressure, that stringer indentation is just going to get bigger and bigger. Now, people will argue that the stringer is what makes the board more flexy, because if you think about it, a stringer goes down the middle, the two foams, they kind of glue to each side of the stringer, and the stringer creates the flex. So without the stringer, you just have one big block of foam that kind of doesn't flex as good, and more just like bobs around. But I think somehow the stringer they have on the rails, it does a really good job. I mean, I wouldn't even say that these boards are stiff. The one time that I do like the PU Twinsman that I have, I noticed that it actually does make sense when the waves get bigger to have the PU board, because that's when the lightness of the boards, and they're just the lightest things ever. Like once you start using the Helium, it's so light, it's like really, really nice. But that lightness actually is a pain point once the waves get bigger and there's more water pushing, because you just can't control it as much. It's so light that it gets like way more out of control, and you try to turn and it's a lot more kind of skiddy and skatey. And if you're good enough, it will work, but it doesn't have as much as the tension as a PU board. Now the stringer might have something to do with that too, because it can flex a little more as the water kind of bumps it around. My Seaside and Beyond is an LFT. That actually does have a stringer, and that board rides, I think, really amazing. Firewire is discontinuing the LFT, and now the Seaside and Beyond is in Helium. But the LFT to me was kind of like the best of both worlds, because has the stringer, it's epoxy, it has the get up and go, but the lightness of the Helium and just like the springiness you get is really awesome. And I'm pretty much sold on it. Whereas you can definitely jump on a PU board after being a Helium fanboy and kind of be like, oh, this feels kind of not dead, but more drivey, more plowy, which is good on big waves. So, yeah, I really, in the end, and then once you start realizing too, even going different sizes of the same shape. So this is the 510 sweet potato. It's a little oversized. I mean, it's a lot oversized. It's 45 liters, but I really want to try the 5.8. I think that would be amazing. But like at the same time, the best part about having like a super oversized groveler is just you're catching his waves so early. And then when it does get like a little bigger, having a slightly bigger bore kind of helps. I've heard tons of people with the mashup, even today. I had a buddy who has the mashup and he has the 5.7. I have the 5.9. And he wishes he had the slightly bigger mashup. And that's because the mashup is a bit deceiving. I would almost not even put it in the same category as the sweet potato, Machado Cotto, Seaside. Like those are like grovelers. The mashup's like a high performance shortboard. I mean, I know I'm gonna like go to my grave saying that, but like when you're paddling and you look at it and you're riding it, it's a shortboard. It's not a. It doesn't really feel like you're groveling. The only time it feels like you're groveling is when the wave is kind of small, but you're kind of doing like the pump tic tac maneuver and shredding hard, almost like you just had a slightly oversized, more volume shortboard, high performance shortboard. But like the Twinsman, which is a high performance twin fin, I think is more stable, less kind of hectic, less scattery than the mashup. And the mashup is for sure, labeled as a groveler. The Twinsman always gets confused for being a groveler, but it's really not. And again, the mashup, it is a groveling surfboard. I mean, if you go to the Firewire site and you go to their grovelers, like Firewire grovelers, they'll list their grovelers. And right there is sweet potato, seaside, greedy beaver, two fish. Oh, interesting, actually. I don't see the mashup in their grovelers. So there you go. Answer my own question. So in their groveler shortboards, they do not have the mashup listed. They have the mashup listed. Oh, it's a hybrid, I think. Yep, it's a hybrid. So that makes sense, where the mashup is a groveler, but because it's kind of like mixing one Groveler, the Seaside with a shortboard, the Spitfire or the Dominator, one of the two, it actually sits more in the performance Groveler category, where right now it's actually the only hybrid shortboard that Firewire has on their website. They have surfboards, they have Groveler, hybrid, performance out of their shortboards. And all the ones I listed are Groveler. The only hybrid's the Mashup, and performance is all their shortboard shapes. But that's super interesting is I literally just learned this right now that I was right all along. That's why you can't undersize the Mashup. It'd be like undersizing a high performance shortboard. Like you're not going to gain much out of it because if it's smaller, you don't have enough board, and once it gets bigger, you don't have enough board. So if you go Mashup, get it the size you want to ride a shortboard. If you go sweet potato, you can go small. You don't have to be crazy like me and go 5'10". A lot of people get the 5'4" or the 5'6". 5'8" seems gargantuous, but I see a whole other army of people that go like 6'2" Volcanic sweet potato, and like I would even suggest just if you're like 50 or 60 and you just want like a longboard cruiser, get the biggest sweet potato you can and get the Volcanic one, because even though the Helium is like the goat, the Volcanic is more like a longboard. The Volcanic's a little more like PU, I think, than Helium, and not in terms of response, but in terms of not getting flicked up by wind or ripples and stuff. It's actually going to be stiffer. The Volcanic is almost kind of more like a typical epoxy board. The Helium is like kind of like I think it's a new class of epoxy where it's like carbon fiber and helium is one epoxy type. And then normal epoxy, let's say it's Volcanic, and then PU's the old tried and true. That's sadly also killing our planet, but that can be for another stream. But in the end, it's like how many times have I said in the end? If you can comment that below, that'd be interesting. But you want to have both of these. Like you need a shortboard Mashup. I'm still stoked that my experiment with realizing that the Mashup it's not a Groveler surfboard. I mean, it is the hybrid, but it is not in the same class as their actual super Grovelers, which consist of Sweet Potato, Machado Cotto, Seaside, Two Fish, Greedy Beaver. Let's talk about the Greedy Beaver for a second, because I think the Greedy Beaver is slept on. Let's see, because the Greedy Beaver, it's not even like that oversized. A 5'10" Greedy Beaver is 34.3 liters. That's the same amount of liters as the Mashup. 34.1, I think, on the Mashup. But the Greedy Beaver, the shape of the Greedy Beaver, if you want to look on the internet right now, it's I think that shape is amazing. I mean, if you look at the Greedy Beaver, it's actually a lot like the Sweet Potato. I mean, it just doesn't have the volume. It has the front nose thing, but then it gets real circular. And the tail actually is a nice little kind of rounded pintail. I've never ridden the Greedy Beaver, but the way they have it volumed out is a little weird. It seems like it's a normal volume. It's not over volume like all the other Groveler boards. The Greedy Beaver is an older board as well, so I think the whole short over volume boards it's not new, but it's newer than like when the Greedy Beaver first came out. That's a pretty old board as well. I remember seeing the Greedy Beaver in that old Timber Tech technology, but it looks like a super fun board, and like you could even have a 5'8" Sweet Potato for like longboard days. the 5.2 when it's like maybe a teeny bit bigger and you want to shred it. And you can have like the 5.10 mashup if you're, 5'10", 170-ish, 160 for when it gets better. And then even like for the pool, surf park, you'd want a smaller mashup to have more in the pocket. The wave's producing enough power that you don't have to worry about if the wave is going to actually hook you up or not. So, yeah, guys. If anyone else has any questions or comments here, hit the 35-minute mark. Enjoying a delicious Waterloo. Not sponsored. I do have to shout out this company, Rational Ale. If you like drinking beverages, but you sometimes don't want it to have the naughty alcohol in it, this is the closest one I've found to the fake beers. It's 10 times better than all the others. Athletic Brewing is good too, but this one takes the cake, and it actually tastes like the closest. So if you're trying to cut back a little bit, I highly recommend that. But like, let me know if anyone thinks in the comments like the next verses should be. Again, like both of these boards, like it's when I've been having the sweet potato, like I'll bring both boards because they actually ride so different that if the wave has some throw, like today when I was surfing, the wave had some top to bottomness. It can be a small wave, but as long as it has some top to bottomness, that's a mashup all day. The mashup excels in like Black's Beach, 2 to 4 foot, kind of low tide fast drainers, because it's just so with that tail, it's so tic tac nimbly that you can like not get caught up when the wave wants to throw over. Whereas a sweet potato, obviously, is going to get caught up and then throw you over. So I think there's great reason to just have them both. If I had to just straight up pick which one, maybe I'll answer your question, Richard, and then I'll pick which one if I had to like pick one for life. I own the mashup. I'm just demoing the sweet potato. So Richard says, for a heavier surfer, 220 pounds, will these boards work on head high to slightly overhead surf? Ooh, that's a good question. That's what everyone says when they don't know how to answer a question. They say, oh, that's a good question. So I don't know how to answer it. But no, I do know how to answer this. So you're kind of a bigger boy. So the sweet potato, no. The sweet potato, unless it's a soft, rolly SoCal wave, if it's a big wave, but a soft, rolly, like say wind and sea, don't tell anyone I said this, but if wind and sea is breaking, but it's like soft wind and sea, the sweet potato would be awesome in that, and like really big wind and sea. Like if you got a 6'2" sweet potato, Richard, like that could be sick, but it would have to be kind of rolly and not very top to bottom. For when it's like that, but it's like kind of going off, I think the mashup's great for that. I mean, at the same time, the mashup actually it does kind of max out. Like when I've ridden the mashup in bigger surf, it gets pretty skatey and a little out of control. You could look at the size charts for the boards, like what they recommend for the wave heights, but like what you're describing is like kind of going off waves where you know you need that's where you'd almost need like a short board or even like a seaside. I think would work a little better in there because it has a little more fullness to it. The mashup gets really thin at the nose, really thin at the tail. Once it gets too big, there's like so much water moving around that unless you're like a really skilled surfer, it's kind of just like too fast and a little too out of control. I feel like 6 foot is like the max at the mashup. When I know it's going to be like bigger than head high, I usually now ride the Album Twinsman because I have a 6.0 Album Twinsman in PU, which is kind of like my step up board now. Because I have bigger twin fins in there, it can actually hold better than the 5.9 mashup on bigger surf, which is crazy. Like you would have never convinced me 5 years ago that a twin fin would do better in big waves than a tri fin. But the Twinsman excelled the other week at Black's Beach. It was big. It was like 8 to 10 foot. It was scary big. It was pretty much my limit. And it was like just going off like the lefts where it looked like Uluwatu. It was pretty gnarly. And I didn't slide out once on the 6 foot Twinsman. The mashup, I would have been just kind of sliding. It would have been like kind of a nightmare. So, for you it'd be tough. I wouldn't actually recommend either for big waves at that weight. Is there another option you were thinking? I mean, really, these are Groveler boards. Like, that's the problem here, too, is we're trying to take these grovelly boards out when it gets big. They're meant to ride small waves, so it'd be kind of like trying to hit a driver at the tee with, like, your putter. It's like, yeah, you could do it, but it's not really going to work good at all. That's where maybe if you kind of super oversized it, like if you had a 6.2 mashup with large Dan Man fins, tri fins, that would be your best bet if you were just focused on, on these boards. But at the Firewire range, I would actually go Dominator for that. I wouldn't go Kelly's boards. I'm realizing Kelly's boards, or actually, I would even go like one of these like kind of mid-length boards. Like I would go, there's some brand new Firewire board that looks really sick. It's called the Lone Star, the Lone Wolf. Lone Firewire. All right, we're going into overtime here. Thanks y'all for sticking around. Starting to lose my voice. But yeah, the Lone Firewire. Someone help me. Sorry, it just came out like a day ago. The Long Rider. So go to boardshop.co.uk and you can watch their review on it. But the Lowrider is sick because it's like not crazy volumed out. It's pretty much like, I think they're replacing the Sunday with the Lowrider just based on what the Lowrider looks like a Sunday. It just has a 5-fin setup. So really that'd be your best option. Like as a bigger person and you're going to ride bigger waves, I would say the new Lone Rider, Seaside and Beyond, 7.4 Seaside and Beyond for you. That'd be sick. 7.4 Seaside and Beyond, the biggest Lone Rider, or even one of these S bosses that are kind of new. But to be honest, they're not the most volume. Actually, I wouldn't recommend the S boss. 6.4 S boss is only 37 liters, so that's a little weird. Yeah. So I'm leaving the chat here for you. I guess he's on 7.4. I go the new one, Low Rider. What dimensions are this? It's probably brand new on the thing. Let's see. Surfboards. Let's see what they have on their step up. Houdini. Oh, they have some crazy Houdini looking board. I don't know what that is. So Lone Rider, Firewire. Oh yeah, this thing's sick. For you, you're 220. Yeah, I'd say 7.4 Lone Rider. So I would say one of those for you, Richard or Danez. Because really, you're getting to that point where you're kind of big. All right, you're welcome. Sweet. Too easy. I mean, you kind of have to do that because, like, I mean, are you rich? You're rich? Because I would say, you kind of have to. I mean, that's I would say it's that step up. Like head high to slightly overhead is a step up condition where you're kind of gonna have a board just for that. These are more high performance grovelers. So really, in an ideal world, you would have a 6.2 sweet potato for 0 foot to head high, And then once it hits head high, you would have the Seaside and Beyond or the Lowrider. I have a Seaside and Beyond, a 7 foot. I think it's one of the best boards ever. I'm actually trying to like replace it with the sweet potato or kind of like a smaller groveler, just because I had a kind of a mid-length phase that I still love mid-lengths, but now I almost like having a straight up longboard or like a smaller, super chunky groveler, because my longboard is like so sick that once it's so small, it's like so my that's my point is my Seaside and Beyond is kind of my step up as well now until if it leaves the quiver, but I am holding on to the Seaside and Beyond because it's if it was like 12 foot tomorrow, that'd be the board I'd ride. That's what makes these mid-length boards so great is they actually do well in like chest head high waves, but then they also do really well once it starts getting like big. So that's pretty sick. Yeah. Anyone else have any other questions or recommendations? We're an OT. Maybe we'll get to an hour. Maybe we'll keep pushing this thing. Other brand wise, I mean, like it's funny because the sweet potato doesn't really have that much competition. There is a what is it called? There is a channel lost board that kind of rivals it. Yeah, the what is it called? There's some lost board that is like the not the puddle jumper. God, what is it called? There's some lost surfboard. The here party platter. So the party platter by Lost is pretty much a Machado Cotto mixed with a mashup, or sorry, a Machado Cotto mixed with a sweet potato. And the dims are actually pretty impressive. I mean the 6-1 party platter is it's a cool looking board. So check that out too. Not for you in particular, Richard, but just like another cool groveler that Lost has now is this Lost party platter, where it's kind of like the Machado Cotto tail, but then it has like the Tomo. It's almost like a Tomo board, an Evo board, but it's super volumed. I mean, this 6-1 is 23.13 liters or inches width, 2.85, 23 inches wide. The sweet potato isn't even 23 inches wide, I don't think. Where's the sweet potato? Yeah, sweet potato I think is 22, 22 and 7/8 or something. Yeah, sweet potato 510 is 22 and a half. So Lost has a board that is wider than the sweet potato, which is insane because I didn't think the board could be wider than the sweet potato. It's like a monstrosity. Again, go watch Space Jam 1, the Monstars. That's pretty much a sweet potato. It's like a freak. But this Lost Party Platter is interesting. I would love to try it. 47 liters at 6'1". Their 510 is 42 liters. So the Party Platter could be a sick board because it's a little less crazy oversized like the sweet potato. So it's almost probably could ride a little. No, I wouldn't say nicer, but a little different. I'm only seeing PU poly though. I know Lost does have a few technologies that are like the Helium, but a board like the sweet potato really benefits from the Helium because it's such a big, boaty, floaty board that even though that it adds to the floaty boatiness, if that was PU, it would just kind of be a little deader in the water and it'd be heavier and you wouldn't be able to throw it around as much because it would just be so over volumed and so much board, such a small little package. But like the mashup really is funny because there's some days where you're like, there's kind of not enough wave. You're like, come on. But then sometimes the mashup like lights up and you feel like Mick Fanning. You're just like fanning the fire on VHS and you're shredding and you have like the flame graphic on the board, you're living in 1999 on the Goldie at Snapper, and you're going faster than you've ever went on a surfboard. And that's where it's like hard to give up the mashup when you have it, because these people that I've talked to that have kind of undersized it, you can tell they don't really want to part with it because they know that like there is magic there. It's just like kind of an in particular wave the mashup needs. The sweet potato can ride a like ankle high ripple to head high. And depending on the fins, it can actually ride like really different. I mean, you could probably like put in a quad and then Kelly's little tiny endorphin fin. And that probably make the sweet potato go even faster, but then still be like kind of holdy. So as long as you're not like the biggest in the pocket surfer, that could work out really sick. There's also a new Firewire longboard that is pretty interesting. It's Helium, and which is crazy because I would think Helium. I don't know what this is. Firewire longboard. What's it called? New. It's like some new board just came out. That Taylor Jensen's model or something. The specialty, but it looks really cool. And it's like the back half's Helium, and then the front top is like the Timber Tech, and it has the same rails, and it actually has like a pretty cool 2+1, kind of like the Sunday fin setup, which is sick because then you could ride the specialty as a twin fin. It says 2+1 right here. What fins do they recommend with it? They don't say, but people are really stoked on it, and I'd be interested to see how like a longboard seems like it would benefit a ton from Helium because like everyone knows longboards are the heaviest boards in existence, and bringing the board to and fro the ocean is like kind of the hardest part. Once you're out there riding a longboard, like I'm having a ball, it's super fun. But then the transportation of it, it's huge. It can barely fit in your 8-foot ceiling. I don't know if you've noticed, but most ceilings are 8 foot. So if your longboard's 8'2", you're not going to have a good time trying to get that like anywhere. And it's such a big thing to put somewhere. But so the fact that it's just a lot lighter is really nice. Has anyone here ridden the new Firewire longboard? There's actually a couple Firewire longboards that seem pretty cool. There might even be a stringer in this one. Let's see. Firewire, what's this called? This is the specialty technology. Helium. Oh, it does have a variable flex I-beam stringer. So it does have a stringer. So interesting. So the longboard, the new specialty, does have a stringer, which is very interesting because I'm thinking when a board gets that big and it's like a longboard, if you don't have a stringer, that's where it can get a little tricky because then you have a long stretched out sweet potato that like will really start acting like a boat, and it can just really start getting thrown all over. So even having one down the line point in the middle of the board to keep each kind of engaged on each side of the wave is like heaps good because a longboard is humongous and you want more performance and more ability to control the board, and that's usually what a stringer does. But a lot of their newer boards are stringerless, like the Machado Cotto stringerless, like I was saying, I think the Seaside stringerless, the Mashup stringerless, and again the stringerless is really awesome. I think the Dark Arts might be stringerless. Let's see. So the Dark Arts boards, are these stringerless or not? Like the Pizel and stuff. Let's see. Not sure. Oh, here we go. Oh, yeah, I think they are. Yeah, stringerless. So that's kind of why I think the Dark Arts, the carbon fiber boards, and Firewire's Helium boards are kind of like paving the way because we're so used to boards having stringers and we're so used to that just being a normalized thing that once they started taking out the stringer, one, you get like a teeny bit more pop because it's one big piece of foam. It's not two pieces that are kind of sharing the stringer. So I don't know if anyone's ridden a dark arts or a carbon fiber, but it's pretty much like the Helium board, but it might even be like a teeny bit more flicky and crazy. They're very similar. I'd be interested to be able to test the same board in carbon fiber and helium. I don't think you wouldn't be able to get a Firewire board in dark arts. That would be interesting though. I know there's some Tomo boards that are in dark arts. So you could probably get like a Tomo that's in the helium or Firewire stuff and the dark arts and kind of compare. But I've definitely been curious about that. And again, the only thing holding me back from the dark arts is looks sick. The all black is all blacks, New Zealand. It's dope, but that wax is getting melty. It's getting melty. Again, I was talking about the rails on the sweet potato and the mashup. They're nice because they're black, but they're actually not. They're slightly dark navy blue. But even just not being pitch black makes it not get as melty in the sun. If your whole board is black, it's tough. I mean, I love the dark art stuff, and I want to have one in my quiver, but it's just tough because I'll prove a point here. I overwax my boards like it's going out of style. And I do clean my wax. I don't just leave the same wax up forever. But I like rely on a lot of wax, and I don't use pads, so it's kind of a nightmare how much wax I'm using. But I do not like slipping. Slipping is not my friend. And sometimes I'll even use two waxes. I'll use, shout out, I'm about to tell you all the secrets of the best wax job, is the Sticky Bumps Tour Series. So there's a Tour Series that's like for cool cold, and the Tour Series that's for warm tropical. That covers the whole range of wax, and it's actually a teeny bit stickier than their normal ranges. So you don't have to focus as much on which temp. You just get one of the one if it's a winter or summer. And then that is sticky enough, or I think it does a great job as long as you put enough on there. If you need a teeny bit more grip, they actually have like a one upper echelon called super sticky, where it's so sticky you can't touch it without getting like the goo on your hands. And it's kind of like having the Venom symbiote goo, and you like turn to the Venom dude. That's how sticky the super sticky wax is. Like I have gloves like gloves that I put on there disposable to wax with the super sticky because that's how hilariously sticky it is in your hands, and kind of once it gets on your hands, it's not coming off. Or if you don't want to do that, you can go buy Foo Wax, which I was a Foo fanboy for a while until I couldn't afford buying $6 bars of wax anymore. And considering I like waxed the living crap out of the boards, it was just like every circle was a quarter. So it was like 25 cents, 50 cents. It wasn't a good investment in the wax game. And I'm not trying to start any rumors here, but I think Foo Wax, it might be a little bad for good old Mother Earth. I'm not entirely sure. But wax is in a similar category of naughtiness because it's somewhat petroleum. It's Sticky Bumps is kind of figured out a little bit. Comment below. I'm kind of just not making this up, but I know even though wax isn't horrible, as bad as surfboards and wetsuits, there are things in wax that aren't the best. See if Reddit. I'm going to Reddit now. Yeah, people aren't really sure, but it is in Brazil, and there's little less rules down there, production, etc. So I'm kind of been back on the sticky bumps train, and even the last few sessions I've only used their Tour Series wax, and once you get a good base, it's like super sticky and works great. So really a fan of the Sticky Bumps Tour Series. Maybe I'm going to claim it right here in the chat. Besides Foo. So if you don't want to spend $1 million, Sticky Bumps Tour Series is the best. And stoked, guys, we reached an hour. Great little milestone there. I appreciate everyone for sticking around. We can talk about the production really quick. So I'm using the glorious ZV-1. The camera is like 20 feet away right now, which is pretty hilarious. It is really far away. I can give you a funny little behind the scenes. So I come close, and then go back here, and we're back. So when you have the camera really far away and zoomed in, what you get is a nice blurry background, and that's what makes movies cinematic, and that can make your movie cinematic. But that's the same lens you would use on the beach filming surfing. So I'm using that same lens to film in my studio. And then I also am using a Tamron 70 to 180, which is a telephoto lens. So it's, pretty much like the Sony 70 to 200 lens that a lot of surf photographers use. But a lot of surf videographers even like using more lens. They'll use a 2x extender, which is like a little adapter that goes on the lens that 2x's the millimeters. So it makes your 200 millimeter focal length 400 millimeters. Because you need a lot of lens when you're filming surfing. Like heat, tons and tons and tons. So sometimes you'll even have like a 200 to 600 millimeter, etc. But those lenses are specifically made for shooting sports like surfing, but they also cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So it's a little tricky to be a surf photographer, surf videographer as a hobby when it costs that much to buy the lens. Like let's say Sony 200 to 600 millimeter lens. So the Sony is, $2,800. No, wait, actually, no, that's wrong. 2,000 bucks, which actually is not. I've used this lens, the Sony 200 to 600. It's an awesome lens, and $2,000 sounds like a lot in the world of cameras and lenses, but it actually is not bad. I mean, these surfboards cost $1,000 now. I remember there was a time when a surfboard cost. I bought a used pod mod in 2017 for $270, which was, and it was actually in really good condition. I used it till like 2021 or something, and it was already been used as a PU. $270, and for a good shape, good, still some life pod mod. So you'll be lucky to find a used board now for $550. But one more thing that I do like about both the mashup and the sweet potato and the helium stuff is so far they've been really bulletproof. I actually haven't got an actual ding. Now I'm really jinxing it, where I like hit something and then there's a ding. The only way I've gotten dings are when I took a fin out one time, the fin punctured it. Luckily it wasn't bad, and I just sun cured it. And then another time I was riding and the fins actually hit some reef, but the fin got chewed up. The box did not bulge or did not get broken at all. So that really sold me, because I've busted out tons of fins on PU boards, and sometimes it's like not even that crazy. You just like touch the sand. Like you're on the board, it touches the sand. And because it's fiberglass PU, it's, strong, but not stronger than epoxy usually. It just digs in and punctures through and rips the fin box out. The fin box, when I did that on the Seaside board, it didn't rip out. It just literally, the fin took the brunt of the force, got chewed up, but the fin box was still nice and good, and there was no puncture anywhere. So I was like, all right, very nice. But I think also this has to do with future fins. So All right, now we're just getting into deep overtime, talking about who knows what. We're having fun here. But yeah, the future fins. So I've been an FCS fanboy since day one, but I'm a converted future guy. I mean, I'm actually an NDS guy, but the future insertion is now my prized fin setup. Couple reasons. At first, like future fins are in there. Like you try like shaking it at all, it's in there. Second thing, there's no actual gap in any of the fin. Um, FCS, because it sticks out on the front, FCS 1 or 2, and the back sometimes, and there's actually a top area where water can go through the mill. It's actually not as similar to a glass on fin, which is kind of nice because it actually makes it a little looser, I realize, where future is a teeny bit stiffer, but just the integrity of the fin boxes in future hold up a lot better, I think. And now I'm just a future fanboy after being FCS for like 25 years, have tons of FCS fins. I kept breaking fin boxes with FCS 1 and 2. I broke 2 fin boxes on the Seaside and Beyond, and I only ride as a twin. I literally broke both fin boxes. Then I broke both fin boxes on my longboard, which is FCS 1. So, it's like there's obviously something wrong, but I think that patent that FCS has, it's just now they're in too deep and they got to keep. I mean, think about Kelly Slater used to be like the FCS figurehead, and now he's the endorphin fins are the endorphin fins might be FCS actually. Let me see. Oh, okay, they are. Yeah, so endorphin fins, they have an FCS version. Only has 2 stars. Let's see. Why do they only have 2 stars? Let's see. FCS endorphin fins is getting bad reviews. I don't know why, but one other thing. Oh, I saw you had a question there, Craig. Thank you. One other thing. The bottom of the future fin has like that tab. FCS has like the 2 tabs. So I think the 1 tab holding the whole fin together does a better job of holding the fin in the box than just the 2 tabs, which that's why it can pull back and push in because there's only 1 tab up front holding in. It's not as like uniform in holding the fin in. But yeah, all right, we're back on the topic here. We got Craig in the house. Craig, thanks for stopping by. You're a valued member of the community. All right, so Craig says, all right, now we're really getting overtime. Should we go for a longer stream yet? Craig says, does the sweet potato 2 really pick up anything? I.e., can it really work in weak, tiny waves that you might normally grab a longboard for? Question mark. It's so short. I'll read your second question. I took my 2 fish out and super clean but weak little peelers the other day and wishing I had a log for it or a sweet potato too. Das is a good question. So, yeah, the sweet potato 2 is by far the closest thing to a longboard than any of the other Firewire boards, like by a long shot. Especially, I've ridden the 2 fish, I've ridden the Machado Kata, I've ridden the Seaside. I rode a 6.1 Seaside, which is 47 liters. So I pretty much rode the same Seaside as the sweet potato. And I would actually say that the super oversized Seaside does do a good enough job where if you had a 6.1 Seaside, well, see, that's a 6.1 Seaside. The 5.10 sweet potato is essentially a similar volume to the 6.1 Seaside. The Seaside has a kind of pointier nose, and the tail, and you have to ride as a quad, and the tail is a lot more retro fishy. So to answer your question, the sweet potato, yes, it works in super duper tiny ways. The only time, so I kind of experimented recently. So there was one day I surfed last week where it was like the smallest it could ever be. It was ankle to like shin, breaking super far out and like really weak. So I've just been having a ball around the sweet potato a bunch. I would usually longboard that day, but I brought the sweet potato out. It actually worked really good, really great. But the one problem that the sweet potato does have when you're trying to like make it a longboard is the longboard still is a little more capable of like paddling super early, getting tons of speed, and then catching the crappy small wave and standing up. The sweet potato, just because it doesn't have, like, say the sweet potato is 5'10", 45 liters, the longboard's 8'6", 70 liters. All those liters make it go way faster. So when you catch the ankle high wave, you already have like a lot more speed. So you're already going way faster. The sweet potato, you can't get it to go as fast initially. So you get up and catch the wave and you start going, but you're not going as fast or planing as hard as the longboard. So if you don't longboard at all and like you just hate longboarding and don't want to learn, like the sweet potato is for sure the best bet in the whole world. I don't think in the end it replaces my longboard, but once I do get one in the Quiver, I'm gonna ride it like pretty much all the time that I'm supposed to longboard until it's like those super small, breaking really far out. Maybe it's like either super high tide or super low tide, and I need my board to start 20 feet away, paddle a lot, and catch the wave, and then have speed and then keep going. The sweet potato, it can't do that just because you can't get as much speed. Here's a longboard, here's a sweet potato. The longboard is going to go faster and then just go off. And the sweet potato is going to get it, but it's going to kind of have to like, it can glide and plane for sure. The longboard just going to go faster and do it better. Once the waves get to be knee to waist high, then it's like sweet potato all day because it's way smaller and you can start shredding it in the pocket. What size sweet potato were you reckoning on getting? Because yeah, the two fish is funny because let's see. Craig says, yeah, the SP wouldn't have anywhere near the momentum. That's exactly the right word, momentum. The longboard, I just noticed it because that day I was talking about, I borrowed my friend's longboard, and right away I was like, oh, this longboard's sick because I was just like going way faster. And it was due to the momentum before I caught the wave. And once you're on the wave, you're on a bigger surface that can go faster. Yeah. And then Craig says 2 fish is insane. Great board. I agree. I read the 5.7 2 fish for one session, and it was really sick. And I hope to ride it again. I agree. It's an awesome board. The one thing I found with the 2 fish though for me is the twin fins. I do need to try with the different twin fins, but the twin fins are a little too skatey for me, which I know Rob probably likes it like that. But for me, the twin fin, I couldn't really. I was having the classic, can't do a bottom turn going left with the 2 fish. It did have the Rob, like those red Rob fins, the Rob Machado twins. Yeah, the red ones. Yes. Okay, so they were the keel. Okay, so that makes sense. So if I had more of an upright twin on the 2 fish, I probably would like it more. But I really liked how it was super maneuverable. What is the 5.7? The 5.7 is like 37 liters, I think. Which one do you have, Craig? Which one? Did you use that new that you bought, or because I know you have the mashup, you have the 5.9 mashup. We talked about that in my mashup review. You were saying that, and I think you actually were saying that. Someone else was saying that I would eventually like the 5.9 more. And I want to comment that yes, that is correct. I mean, I would love to have the 5.10 as well, and I would ride it a lot. But there are those days when I do tricks on the mashup 5.9 that I've never done, and that I understand I can only do on that smaller mashup because the tail's a little nimbier, and you can really throw it up, and it's just so fast. It's the fastest board ever. Craig says 5.9 mashup, 5.5 2 fish. Okay, so you have the 5.5 2 fish. Cool. Yeah, so I read the 5.7. Yeah, see, I don't think the 2 fish Today, Junior, I don't think the two fish is like the two fish reminds me more of the seaside than the Machado Cado. Um, and because Rob kind of likes the keel fin types, or I actually don't like keel fins, I like upright fins. Um, I feel like on Rob's boards I have to cheat a lot and ride like kind of different fins than he rides. What's the 5.5 liters? What is the 5.5 liters? It's 33 probably or something. And it's probably similar to the mashup liters. Oh, here we go. 5.5. Yeah, 31.6. So, yeah, start with the 5.7, 34.9. Yeah. Yeah, it was to say it again, it's a little too skatey for me. I just have to try another pair of fins on it, but little too skatey for me. It's almost like I need the twin. I just need to try different twin fins in. I think that's what it is too. But I think it's also because the board, how it's set up, it's kind of like a seaside, but it's pretty much a seaside. I mean, it's a go fish, but when I'm looking at it, it looks a lot like the seaside as well. Oh yeah, so yeah, it's like a freer seaside is what Craig says. 31.5 for the 5.5. Yeah, exactly. That's what I think it is. It's a freer seaside. And that's kind of why I don't even mind riding the seaside as a twin fin because the fins are up more, so it creates a little bit more stiffness, which I like because the two fish is like it's just a little too skatey for me. And it's the reason I didn't ride twin fins for pretty much my whole life because I don't like bottom turning and then skidding. Like I need the bottom turn to hold, and then I need the top to hold. Twin fins, you gotta ride them a little more. You gotta baby them a little more, and it's just kind of not my style of surfing. I'm a lot more top to bottom. I'm a lot more front footed, and I really push on the bottom turns. So I want to try the two fish again because I think it's a really, really cool board, especially if I had some upright NDS album twin fins. I think they're the best twin fins ever. But yeah, what two fish? Yeah, exactly. I mean, even the day when I had the sweet potato, that was the only day I wish I had the longboard. But most other days when I've ridden the sweet potato lately, I've been so stoked to have it as opposed to a mid-length or a longboard, just because I've been just loving being able to do roundhouses and like go top to bottom and just do like the sweet potato is really good at what the mashup does or the Machado Cado does. Is when you're going on the line, you can kind of like throw it up in the white water and bring it back down, and that part's fun too because it wouldn't dig as much rail as you would think. It does a pretty good job of not digging rail, and that's because of the platform. If it was like straight up like that at the rail, it would dig in more because as the platform, it has some give when the rail digs. It doesn't just dig all the way in. It kind of like lets the board do that, even though it's like a humongous, fat, thick with two C's type deal. Craig says, yeah, try a 5.5. It paddles every good as a 5.5 as the 5.9 mashup. Sig, no, I really want to. I really want to. The 5.6 pod mod used to be my jam, and that was before I started kind of having like neck issues, and I started making the board bigger, not just to like have to paddle like that with your neck so much. But 5.6 used to be like my perfect size because my feet were just perfectly placed. Yeah, so the 5.6 pod mod's 31.3 liters. So the pod mod is not that dissimilar than the two fish, just twin fin setup and a deeper swallowtail. Yeah, but there's not really many other. I was saying earlier the Lost Party Platter is the closest thing to the sweet potato. But other boards like there is the Gremlin, which Noel South did say that was his favorite Groveler. And to me, it looks like a Dumpster Diver 1. It looks like a Machado Cotter or a Dumpster Diver 1. Very flat, with a little bit of rocker, then kind of like a convex top part above the fins. But let's see the dimensions on the Gremlin. Have you guys, anyone ever surfed the Gremlin? Actually, I have surfed the Gremlin. Yeah, I surfed the 5'10", 35.8 Gremlin, and it was awesome. Yeah, right here, 5'10", 34-liter Gremlin. So I surfed a Gremlin. It was like the Gremlin XL, I think. And I thought it was really awesome. It was, yeah, it was epoxy. It was like their version of epoxy. But it's definitely not like a sweet potato Mega Groveler. It's kind of like a Machado Cotto. So yeah, even like when I type into our new internet gods, the internet gods tell me like the Lost Rhinos fish, the Channel Islands fish, boards that are more so similar to the mashup. The sweet potato, it's in like a realm of its own, and Damien did a good job of making a board that was so different, um, so unique, and just kind of so weird that I slept on this thing for a long time. Again, it's more so because the older ones, I just wasn't that stoked on the tail. It was like wider, and then it was just a squash, and it was just so wide. And every time I saw it, it might have even been a quad fin back in the day. It might not have even been a 5 fin. And I just was like, that thing's gonna turn like it's not. You're not gonna be able to. And like the S move is what I want. So I'm really stoked that I ended up giving this thing a try because it's like I really like it, and it's gonna be sad when I have to return this to the Firewire family because I'm obviously gonna have to get one at some point. But I also really want the 5'10" Machado Cotto, and my bank account doesn't like any of those things. So, um, and just to reiterate, I mean, look at this. So these are pretty similar in height, and look at that. This thing fits inside. Like that's unbelievable. How much extra foam is going around the whole board. But that's what makes the sweet potato magic. There's plenty of times you're riding on it, and you can do this thing where you just put your feet right here. You just put your feet right here. Like so you go to the inside, there's nothing left, and you just put 1 foot here, 1 foot here, and you can ride it for like another extra 10 yards and get that little extra flow out of the wave. And that's one of the best parts about the board because it keeps so much volume all right here, which the Machado Cotto does too. The mashup doesn't do that. It gets kind of thin right here. The nose gets thin. I know it for the shortboarders in the world it doesn't, but for me it does. This keeps it thick right here, very thick. You can kind of just tell just slightly by looking at that how much more depth the sweet potato gets as it goes to the nose than the mashup. But oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention is the sweet potato though does have a good bit of rocker, nose rocker, as you can see. So like it has a good flip up, and that helps it where I don't nosedive very often on this. Maybe when I'm doing the last 2 second, I'm walking up here and I'm literally standing like hang fiving. Maybe then I'll nosedive, but like when you're actually pumping on the wave, you're not nosediving that much. It somehow does a really good job of just like having the flick up right here, where you're not nosediving. Like I know that was one of the main concerns with the older ones, but the new one, this new model is just. I think he's kind of. I think it's his 4th iteration of it or something. I think he's just perfected it and really made a board that like it's hard to deny that it could be a board that could be in anyone's quiver, and like anyone would be stoked on it, because there's tons of days where it's pretty crappy out, and even if you do longboard or not, it's awesome to have like a really short, wide gravelly board just to mess around with. But yeah, any other boards that y'all considered in terms of mashup versus sweet potato? Oh, there we go. Now it's really coming. Now the show's really going to HE double hockey sticks in a handbasket. But the other thing that is, I think, pretty unique about the mashup is like, because of the 5-fin setup, I think it actually, both setups do work well. Like it depends on the kind of surfer you are. And then the 2+1 setup works really well as well, because as long as you get the right twin fin, it's pretty much like it'd be like having the 2-fish, but then you have some more hold. But it's also would be like kind of more nimble than the 2-fish, and because it's not that dissimilar in volume. I mean, the 2-fish, you said the 5.5 is, yeah. So I mean, you get a little bit more length. So maybe it's not as perfect in the pocket as a 2-fish, but I think it makes up for it with having more fin options, and then being like a little more high performance than cruisy. Well, I think that's about wraps it up, y'all. Let me know if anyone has any more questions or not, but we're right at hour 30 here. We dove deep. We went in deep. We duck dove. We took a few on the head, but we came out alive. The sweet potato versus the mashup. In the end, if I could only have one, gosh, that'd be hard. I might have to say I own the mashup, but I might have to say sweet potato. Just because there's a lot of boards at the mashup you could get that's similar. But the sweet potato, it's just in a uber groveler class of its own that you can't really mimic the sweet potato with another board. The mashup, you could, maybe RNF, Pod Mod, Dominator, even like a Seaside, I think could be Machado Cado. Like there's a decent bit that are as much alike it. But if you just want like the groveliest, uniquest board, like the sweet potato it's hard to beat. So, all right, guys, I appreciate everyone for tuning in to another Hero's Journey live stream for the surfboard comparison. Please, on your way out, smash the like, hit subscribe. Let me know what board you're going to choose. Until next time, peace.